Have you ever sharpened a knife before? Now, what did you use to sharpen it with? How did it go? Did you cut yourself while you were trying to sharpen it? Was the knife even sharper than what it was before? What did you use the knife for next? So once I went next door to the ropes course at Marshalltown Community College. Well, it's right there. I don't know if they're really affiliated or anything, but they tied me to a cable up really high up in the air, and they used a truck and a pulley to pull me up really high and then drop me like a big swing. Now, if you did that, would you rather be hanging from this rope or this one? Let me guess, you'd rather be hanging from this rope, right? Now, why does all of this matter? Well, we're going to find out in the next part of our Right Habits series. Hello, I'm David Chase, and this is part of our channel where we talk more in depth about some of the scriptures and truths that our small groups are talking about on Wednesday night. Collide is a group of Christians that believe our faith is more about doing the right things than just knowing the right things. Feel free to register yourself at the link in the description below to get connected to one of our groups and join in on the discussion about doing what Jesus taught. Today is part 4 of our Right Habits series. This video builds perfectly on part 2 of the series. If you haven't watched it, you should. You should pause right now and go watch that one first. It is linked in the description below just for your convenience. I want to talk to you about how to invest and what the Bible says about investing and why to invest in important relationships and friendships. So we're going to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 4, and we're going to look at verse 7. Here it says, "Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment?" Meaning, like, why am I depriving myself the enjoyment of company, of true friendships? "This too is meaningless, a miserable business. 2 are better than 1. Because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." We've seen this, you know this. This is the beauty of team sports, is seeing team against team, where we know that one person versus individual sports, we know that this team is accomplishing more than what any one of them could accomplish by themselves. We just got done watching the Super Bowl, and we saw that even though they'd make a big storylines out of individual players, that it didn't matter how good a certain player was in that game. It only mattered how good the whole team was. We know this. We know that if I'm by myself, you can knock me over. But if I have my friends all around me and they're holding me up and they're guarding me and they're like linking arms with me, arm to arm, holding me up, there is no way that you by yourself could knock me over. No way, man. Not with my friends. Take a look back one book, and let's look at Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17. So you just go back one book, just a few pages even, 27, verse 17. And let's see, again, we think this was Solomon, but there are lots of Solomon plus other wise authors that attributed to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17, it says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." In this day and time, when the Bible was written, iron was the sharpest, strongest object known to man, kind of like diamonds or steel or cheese graters are today. You know, the only thing strong enough to clean a cheese grater is another cheese grater. So the only way they could sharpen iron is with iron. Now, we still do this today when we sharpen knives, using more steel to sharpen other steel knives. This imagery is what investing in good friends is doing. A good friend is someone that makes you stronger and better, a better version of you, and makes them a better version of themselves. Someone who is not afraid to call you out, and you're not afraid to call them out. Once I saw a lot of marriages falling apart all around me, and so I took inventory of my friends that I had been investing in my life, and I went to each and every one of them, and I was like, okay, we need to talk. You have my permission. I need you to call me out if you see me wrecking my life and my marriage. Like you are a friend that I would listen to, and I need you in my life to call me out when you see habits that could be leading to big mistakes in my life. And it was really cool because then they all asked me to do the same. Well, I need you in my life to do the same thing. And it was this idea of iron sharpening iron, these friends making each other stronger. I have been super blessed to call Hudson Shires a friend since I was 10 years old. That has been, well, a long time. In that time, he has gotten married, had 8 kids, moved to France to do mission work, and he is someone who, when his mission comes to mind, he doesn't have time for nonsensical friends. He invests, and so I got him on a call to ask him a couple of questions.
I've moved around a lot. My mom is French. My dad's American. My dad's from California. He met my mom in France. We lived in Germany for a bit. And we ended up in the Midwest. So there's been a lot of moving. And when you move, you got to make friends, right? And then my kids have moved pretty much every year to every other year, their whole childhood as we've been missionaries. So,
wow.
One of the things that has helped me, and this is, I'll talk generally about friends, and then I'm going to talk about the kind of friends that are going to draw you closer to Jesus. We have friends who are not Christians. Most of our friends on the mission field are not Christians, obviously. Like if everyone here was a Christian, you wouldn't need a missionary. So we look, first of all, for people who are interested in what life is about. You know, people who aren't just interested in getting up, going to work, earning money and coming home and watching TV. People who are interested in their kids. They're the sort of people who read books or who do just about anything where I'm looking at that person, I'm like, hey, that guy thinks about why he's here. And even if they're not Christians, you know, that's a really big deal because they're destined to have eternity without Jesus. But it's already a better category of person to be hanging out with. We're going to have good discussions, if nothing else, but I'm hoping for more too, because I care about them. Now, when it comes to Christians, you guys may have heard this. There are kind of 3 levels of friendship. When you're a disciple of Jesus, and you're going to have a Timothy friendship, you're going to have a Barnabas friendship, and you're going to have a Paul friendship. Those are kind of common relationships. So what's that mean? Well, it means that you're going to either be investing in somebody who's younger in their faith than you. Now, when you're 15, 16, that may not be much of an option because you're kind of young in your faith at 15, 16. But you'll be surprised at 20 that 15, 16-year-old may have something you can help them with. And even when you're 15, 16, that 12-year-old might have something you can help them with. And then your Barnabas is like the guy or the girl who's like where you are at in your walk. Now, that's not just about age. I've met people that are older than me that are where I am in my walk, and I've met people that are younger than me that are more mature than I was at that age. So we help each other out. And then the Paul relationship, that's someone who's been there, done that. They're like the experienced veteran Christian, and you're going to them, and to be honest, a lot of times you'll feel like, I'm not given much in this relationship, but I'm getting a whole lot. So I look for people that are Paul's, that it's like, that's the kind of person I'd like to be in Christ, or they just understand something that I'm really clueless about, or they seem to have overcome something that's been causing me problems. When it comes to the Barnabas ones, the people that are like around where I'm at, I'm looking for people that usually, to be honest, as they're walking towards Jesus, Jesus gives them a mission, right? And you start noticing, hey, we're kind of working on the same mission. And it'd probably be good to get to know them and help them out because like we've got things in common in terms of our calling. And then when it comes to Timothy type, I'll be honest, most of my Timothys are my kids. I've got 8 kids. It's a lot of little Timothys there. So I spend a lot of my time investing there. But I've worked with youth groups too. And what I'm looking for in a Timothy is I'm looking for that kid who's not satisfied with what most kids are satisfied at 16. I'm looking for that kid who's like, I want my life to matter to God. Well, it matters to God, but he wants his life to be for God. And when I see a kid like that, which is like how Timothy was, right? If you read in the Bible, Timothy was on fire for God, and his church helped him as much as they could. And then they said, you know what? There's not much more we can give Timothy. He needs to go out and start ministering with Paul, with someone really experienced. And so even me, even though I've got a lot to learn, for some Timothys, I can be a Paul. There's some things I've been there and done that, like you have too, Dave. And say, I'd like us to write down 5 to 10 questions that we would really like people never to ask us because we don't want to answer it. But we know that's where the fight is spiritually.
Yeah.
And I've done this, and it's tough. But if you can do it, we've done this. It is not a fun process at first. But here's the thing you'll discover. You're not the only sinner in that room. And there's hope. Yeah. And because you're being honest, you're going to change. You know, think of it as an athlete, right? Like if the athlete runs a 100-yard dash, we'll say, okay, and they just tell him every time how great he is, but they don't tell him that, you know, really it's a lot better if you run on 2 legs instead of hopping the whole way. He's never going to win anything, right? Like he's not going to be actually doing the dash. Like you don't want people who tell you what you want to hear. And that means you need to tell them the truth, and you need to say, give me feedback, give me real feedback. So those are some shortcuts that I see that God's used, because they're going to be sparks. It's like iron sharpening iron. None of us like the other guy saying, hey, last week you asked me to ask you about your internet search history. Last week you asked me to ask you if you respected your mom. How did that go this week? And then when you're like, well, to be honest, it was pretty bad, and I didn't even think once about those issues, right? The interesting thing is your failures are part of God's education, and as you get kind of embarrassed by having to admit failure and the other guy has to do it too, the failures will become less frequent. But you know what? They'll just always be there if you're never asked the questions.
And that's really good stuff, Hudson. Thank you so much just for taking some time. Sharing some of this with our students all the way from France. It's awesome. Thanks for making the schedules work.
Now remember, youth, pursuing spiritual habits is, I know I say this all the time, but it's not about trying harder or making Jesus love you more. It's about cultivating patterns and choices that draw us closer to Jesus and help us become more like him. Please, during this series, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you have to perform to earn God's love. And don't fall into the trap of legalism, that following Jesus is just following a list of rules. It's not. Loving Jesus is about loving his kids, about loving others. When we spend time with others, other Christians, it can help us make better choices and actually do the things we know in our hearts we ought to do. I hope God will give you the wisdom to see what friends are worth around you as you're looking around yourself and taking inventory, that he will help give you the wisdom to see what friends are worth investing in, and you will be blessed with the friends that you will make and that make you a better you and last a lifetime. Now, I get that also we're called to go on out and make relationships that lead other people into a relationship with Jesus. And so there's a balance here that also needs to be kind of weighed in and thought about. I need to be developing relationships with people that don't know Jesus so that Jesus can have a relationship with them, because that's what Jesus did for me. That's what somebody else did. Somebody else interceded in my life so that I could be saved. I need to be able to do that for other people. But it's also so important that as we're doing that we're never losing sight of the friendships that really can cultivate us and make us a better versions of ourselves. So I hope you'll be able to have the wisdom to be able to know that balance. I'll see you next week.